Thank you. Chief guest of the day, Mr. Dhiman Parekh, founder and CEO, The Better India and The Better Academy. Madam Meera Haridas, Director, Workner Business Associates Private Limited. Chairperson, Women's Forum, KMA. Madam Shalini Warrior, past presidents, managing committee members, KMA members, invited guests, and my dear students, a warm good evening and a hearty welcome to each and every one of you to this evening lecture. You are our strength, and thank you for your kind support to KMA and your esteemed presence. We have been organizing empty number of programs every week, like evening lectures, StartCom sessions, startup companies with the startup companies, and panel discussions, women-specific sessions, digital marketing, CEO Congress, and many, many more. Today is yet another session organized by the Women Managers Forum. Every month, she has been organizing programs with most relevant topic with exemplary speakers. She started with the panel discussion on the topic glass ceiling for women leaders, myth or reality. Many masterclasses such as digital marketing, artificial intelligence, build a brand called you, make your money work for you, financial planning and made easy, continuous learning and staying agile, women directors, how to get past tokenism, women leaders, assertiveness is not aggressiveness, boosting emotional intelligence. These are some of the topics. And today, another interesting topic, building better India. India is a country of great potential. How can we create a better India when there is uncertainty everywhere? To talk about the topic, building a better India, we are indeed privileged to have a very special, prolific speaker, Mr. Dhiman Parekh. He believes in the power of storytelling to drive impact. And today, his work has been touched millions of lives in India. I'm sure moderator will going to be introduce the chief guest soon. And let me introduce my friend and the moderator, Meera Haridas. She was part of my team when I was the chairperson of Women's Forum. She is our KMA member. Still, let me formally introduce her. Meera Haridas is the Director, Workner Business Associate Private Limited and co-founder of L&D Pool. L&D Pool is learning and development platform. She is having 25 plus rich experience in the banking, financial services, healthcare sectors. She is the current chairwoman of CII Indian Women Network Kerala chapter. Meera is the recipient of many national awards for the branding and marketing and was listed among the most influential marketing leaders 2016 by the World Marketing Congress and Kerala's Women Leaders 2021 by CMO Asia. With this, let me request Meera to take this forward. Meera, over to you.
Thank you, Nitla. Pleasure to be on this forum and really good to have Dhiman Parekh today. Really honored, Dhiman, to have you today on this forum. Better India, what more relevant topic and what more relevant brand that we can talk about this evening as we progress. Dhiman Parekh is an impact entrepreneur, well known in the Indian sustainability landscape for building the world's largest impact content platform, thebetterindia.com. The Better India is a disruptive brand, bringing positive solution-oriented content to the mainstream. With a strong conscience, a strong and conscious community of 200 million, that's a really big number. Impact has been always at the heart of Better India's business. In 2020, he leveraged this community, launched India's only DTC subscription box for sustainable products, the Better Home. And in less than a year, they scaled the Better Home to reach 70,000 plus customers across 600 cities. Wow. And last week, their home care vertical was acquired by the e-com giant First Cry's Global Bees. The team is already building their new venture, working closely with their community to bridge the gap in offerings in the current edtech space in India. The idea is to leverage that their strong community to spawn off and scale purpose-led business that the community can benefit from. Before his entrepreneurial journey, Hemant built the entire e-com offering from scratch at coupos.com, built the early versions of NGPay's mobile commerce app, and designed and built the iVivo social networking platform. That is indeed a very impressive profile, and we are really honored to have you this evening, Hemant, to share your journey and learn more about how organizations in the impact space can be built with scale and in a profitable manner. And this is really something that there is a lot of learning and opportunity for us in Kerala, particularly because, as you know, the Kerala model of growth has bypassed in a major way from agri directly to more of services. And there are lots of entrepreneurs and wonderful leaders in this on this forum who would, I'm sure, benefit a great deal from your uh, talk this evening.
Thank
So
you so
without
much,
much,
Meera.
welcome, Hemant. In fact, we had the honor of hosting Anuradha a few months ago on iWin, and it was really a pleasure to have you all here. And it's always a pleasure to hear about Better's engagement with society and India at large. So I'm sure I don't want to take too much time anymore coming between you and the audience. So uh, can we just start? I would just like to hear your initial thoughts about uh, your presence this evening here, and what is the vision that drove you to bring Better India? Because having one startup following up with the second one and a third one, it's not easy. The journey can be very, very long and hard, but you've been going and gung ho on it. So we'd like to hear more about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and thanks again to everybody for having me here and for attending this discussion. I've thoroughly enjoyed our previous engagements with Ivan. In fact, when we were in Kochi, and that was my second time in Kochi, and I thoroughly loved it. So, getting into this whole topic, right? I think I'll just give you a little more background and context so people can kind of know why we are doing what we're doing and what's the impact of all of this. I started as a computer science engineer. That's been my primary sort of primary education space was computer science engineering, and I worked with large technology companies, and then I went to get my MBA from the Indian School of Business, and that's where I really realized that there was this whole bunch of new companies being built on the internet, right? And I met a lot of fellow entrepreneurs there. And then after my business school, when I started working in the internet space, it was fascinating. This was back in 2007. It was fascinating to see so many new business models emerging on the internet, which was a completely new economy, right? So you were seeing travel sites come up. You were seeing you could now suddenly book a movie ticket online. You could start shopping online. You could connect with friends online. It was so fascinating, and that's when a thought struck us, that's Anuradha and me, that how could you leverage the internet to drive large scale social impact, right? Because here were people building large scale businesses, reaching out to millions. And we thought that this could actually be a fantastic tool to catalyze social change on the ground. So then the question was, yes, possibly, but how do you do this, right? How can you go about making a large scale impact happen? So when we started thinking about this, we realized that if you really want to drive large scale change, you need to have, in fact, just think about it, right? Any large scale social impact can happen. The largest scale is if you're a part of the government, right? The scale that the government can drive in terms of impact is unparalleled, right? But now when you start looking at it as like, if that's not an option, how else can you go about making a difference? And our view was that if you build a community of people who can come together, and are aligned on specific social causes, you can actually then mobilize this community for various different campaigns and causes, right? So then it occurred to us that, look, the internet is such a lovely place where you can actually uh, build a community online. You were seeing social media. That's what it is, right? People are coming online. So then how could you build a community around impact? And the answer for that was that our hypothesis was that if you could use the power of stories, the power of storytelling, you could actually bring people together. And then we realized that, okay, but what's the kind of content? What stories? Right? And we realized that there's absolutely nobody talking about what's working in the country, right? Everybody's working in silos. There are tons of NGOs doing some great work. There are tons of social enterprises. There are tons and tons of individual change makers who are doing some amazing stuff in their neighborhoods, in their communities. But nobody knows about them. So the spotlight is disproportionately high on what's not working in the country, right? Even though if in this community, you look around, you will see some amazing people who have done some amazing work, but we have not amplified it. So we saw a big gap, and we said that we will actually throw a spotlight on the better aspects of India in general. And that led to the whole phrase, the better India, right? The better India does not connote or say that, hey, everything is good over here or everything is better. No, the point is that yes, there are problems, but there are a whole bunch of people who are solving these problems, and this is the impact that they are creating. And what we are trying to do is give access to the common citizen to understand what is better about India, what are the good things that are happening. So on that note, we started the Better India. And this was again a side project while we had our day jobs. So on Saturdays and Sundays in Bangalore, Anuradha and I would go around the city, meeting people who are doing some amazing work, and we just write about them. The idea was, it was never a venture or a new initiative or a new company or any of that sort. It was just a personal, I would say, a goal or a pursuit, that we wanted to start documenting stories of people making a difference, fundamental level. But as we started documenting this, putting it up, slowly people started reading. First it was just friends and family, then they would share it with others and all that. And very slowly we started noticing a very interesting pattern. Whenever we would write a story, a week or two later, the person who we had written about would actually reach out to us and say, hey, because you guys wrote about us, so many people came forward, they've donated money, some people have volunteered, they've offered to fix some things and so on. And I still remember this in the very early days. We had written about a school in Chennai, which only accepts visually impaired, actually hearing impaired kids, because mainstream schools do not. And we wrote about this, and 2 weeks later, the school got in touch with us, and they said that because of what you wrote, a group of people drove down from Bangalore. They've donated some 3 lakhs for us to buy furniture. They've, they on the weekend they painted our walls, and they're now helping fix our hostel block. And all this wouldn't have happened if you had not written about us, right? And to me, that was a very, very interesting revelation, that by just publishing the story, we didn't do anything. We didn't even ask people to go anywhere. We just published the story about the school, and people themselves took on this initiative. So this happened, and this was a very sort of an eye opener for us. Similarly, a little later, we wrote a story about a photography club which was run by completely blind people. It was very fascinating. And after we wrote this, I think it was about 2-3 weeks later that a blind girl actually got in touch with us through a friend, and she said that all her life she wanted to pursue photography, and she didn't even know who to tell, because anytime she brought it up, it would be like, what a ridiculous thought, you're blind, how can you do? But here you have now shown me the way that there are people who are doing it. And she said that she's gone and joined this place, and it has completely transformed her life. That was just one life that we transformed, but it was for us an indicator of what we could do if we scale this up, when we were being read by a few hundred people, if I could take this to, let's say, 1 million people, what's the kind of change we could, drive? On that thought, we then, on a whim, we just quit everything that we were doing, and we said we need to scale this, and we plunged into this full time. Uh, it was one of those moments where we also, in fact, had a young baby at that point. So it was really kind of putting everything behind this, taking such a huge risk, and building out the Better India. Since then, of course, we've come a long way. We reach out to over 200 million people every month. But to me personally, the most interesting part is that our stories have led to, influencing government policies. We've brought water and sanitation in villages. We've helped farmers come out of poverty. We've helped urban slum schools get funded. Very recently, we've helped set up sanitary napkin manufacturing facility in Rajasthan, completely run by women, and handed it over to them. We fought drought in Tamil Nadu. There's a district which we made to go from drought to water surplus within a year. Thousands and thousands of case studies of such social, economic, environmental impact that we've managed to achieve. That we've been fortunate to know that we've got both national and global recognition. We in fact recently, MIT in Boston released a report which has rated us as the most influential voice in the development sector in India. In India, of course, we even had the Honorable Prime Minister mention that whenever he gets a chance, he reads the Better India to find and know more about inspiring Indians. We've got, we've been invited to Harvard Business School to talk about how we created a whole new idea of using storytelling to drive social change. So it's been a fascinating journey. But what I really like to highlight, that it started with that one thought, that how could you use the internet to drive change? And here we are. It's been a very, very insightful and a journey full of learnings, which I'm really grateful for.
Thank you. A brilliant overview on what you have. What interested me was just to say, how did you arrive at that, the tipping point of the brand Better India?
Yeah.
What was that particular moment when you felt that's the word that would click, and hit the right chord in all hearts, I would say.
Yeah, that's a good point. We didn't want to kind of, what we were very clear is that we were not going to celebrate any particular ideology or any sort of, on the religious front or political front or any of that. What we were very clear is that this had to be about the common man, right? How do we come up with a name there? We also didn't want it to be a sort of a completely NGO driven kind of a model, because that's not what we were building. We were going to be a for-profit, for impact enterprise. And when we started thinking about various names, and I still remember we were just brainstorming different names as to what this could be. And the phrase came out where we said that, okay, what are we really doing? We are just showcasing the better aspects of India, right? So then the idea was, then why not call it Better India? So the idea was to call it Better India, but that domain name wasn't available. So we said, okay, fine, we'll add the. So it became the Better India because that domain name was available. And the domain name was very important for when you're putting up a website. And so that's how the Better India kind of came into being. And I think since then we've moved on and we've started thinking about the better as an ecosystem. So when we launched our e-commerce range of products, for instance, it was called the Better Home because it was a home care. We had an e-commerce division which was all about sustainable home care products. These are 100% biodegradable, laundry wash, dishwash, and all of that. So we called it the Better Home. Now we're doing something in the education space and we're calling it the Better Academy. So I think we've really stuck to the better as a phrase, and that's become very deeply ingrained in us. So I think you're on mute, Meera.
So this is really, a wonderful way to create that brand, and the story has built up beautifully. Ultimately, that's what counts, in a brand. It's really wonderful. And it's lovely to hear you, the crossover from being an engineer, and you were in an engineering line, and I believe even Anuradha was in an engineering line. So you move from engineering completely to a different space of media impact, social impact, and also literally storytelling.
Yeah.
Now, what was those crossover again? Those that trigger in crossing over to that spot of storytelling.
No, that's a great question, and we've never thought about this as a crossing over, because for both me and Anuradha, engineering has largely been about problem solving, right? It's just that engineering gives you very good frameworks to solve problems. When I did computer science, for instance, we were solving problems. We were solving problems at large scale for large tech, companies. And when we looked at this space, the impact space, we never looked at it from a point of view saying, how do we build a media company, right? We looked at it from a point of view of saying, how do we solve the problem that exists? The problem that exists today is that there isn't enough to inspire people to come forward and make a difference, right? So we said, so if you look at the way we built our organization also, our first, I think the team of first 5 people were all engineers. Our first writer was an engineer. One of our first writers, our editor was an engineer at one point. And all of us now, none of us kind of looked at it saying, hey, this is not something I should do. Because I think traditionally we've been put in silos that if you've studied this, then you're largely slotted into doing these kind of jobs. But I think that the joy is that we need to look at every schooling and college that we get. We should look at them as tools which help us address things in the world in a slightly more efficient manner. I viewed engineering as a tool which says, okay, I'm probably a little more suited to solve this problem than if I didn't have that. So we never saw it as a crossover. In fact, the whole website was built by me because I could build it. So I thought, okay, this is a great challenge. I could actually do this. Then we brought in a lot of frameworks we had studied in B school and brought it into the impact space, right? Where largely impact was relegated to people who come in only from, say, liberal arts background or the social sciences. And we said, that's why are we slotting it? Why can't we bring solutions that have worked in this sector, in the corporate sector? Why can't I bring it here and drive that same efficiency? So the crossover has been fascinating. We never viewed it that way. I think we just felt more excited that now there are more problems to solve using the tools we have.
Even when media is a very strong presence in India with multiple media at multiple levels. When you set off, you went into a digital media, probably one of the early players in the digital space, because I remember when we used to have digital media coming up, print and electronic and all would be very vehement that we're not going to die so soon, and rightly so, because there is a huge market in India in different forms. So when you move to the media space in the digital with your strategies, what did you feel? I mean, what were the early challenges? Were there any problems or any difficulties you faced in with the conventional media or with the regular players who were also in that space?
Yeah, I think when I started, I actually went and spoke to the editors of all the mainstream publications that I could reach out to, and all your largest publications you can think of, right? And every one of them said that this isn't going to work. Nobody wants to read this kind of content. And in hindsight, I consider that I was fortunate that everyone was thinking that way, because it allowed me to build without anybody paying attention to us. And we continue to build it because both Anuradha and I strongly felt that we wanted something like this. And she and I are both good consumers of content. I mean, we do read a lot. And we never, for instance, we haven't had television in our home for like 15 years now. We've been reading content digitally for a long time. So we knew that there is a trend. It is going to happen. maybe we were early adopters, but if we are going down this path, there are going to be a lot more people who will eventually go consume content digitally. So two things. One is that nobody in the mainstream space saw this as an opportunity to go after. So it left a wide gap open for us. And we were actually seeing on the ground level, people were loving it. Right? Every day I'm getting 100 emails saying, we love this stuff and all of that stuff. So we knew, hey, this is something we can quietly keep building. Before the giants kind of know it, I think we would have been able to manage it. This thing. And the second thing, we were seeing the trend that content consumption was going to happen digitally. You were starting to see the rise of the social networks, be it Facebook, Twitter, all of those early stage signs were there. So we took a bet that we should create digital content. We should create in this space of what, let's say, we call this as solutions journalism now. Um, and a lot of people who actually said that this won't work. I've had conversations with them 5 years, 6 years down the line, and they have been amazed that it has become so big. And a lot of the mainstream, of course, mainstream brands also then started, on the side, they've started similar publications, or at least started similar sections in their, either newspapers or things, or focusing on the positive stuff and all. But yeah, I think my learning was that if you're going to go get advice from veterans, also understand the context from where they are giving you that advice, right? So long-term conditioning is not necessarily a good thing, and that's where you can actually find opportunities, which we saw.
I think you hit the nail on the head, because that's exactly what a disruptor does. And going against the tide, while it will be challenging, definitely has its own, long-term joy of seeing your vision growing. Right? So you built a 200 million community. What was the kind of traction that you had over the last 10, 15 years, 10, 12 years, what you have done?
Yeah, for the longest period of time, it wasn't much, So when this was a side project way back in 2008, and I think it became a full-time thing for us after about 4 years or 5 years. It was just meandering. We had a few hundred people. We were also just putting content stories out on weekends whenever we would get a chance to kind of step out and do it. But what we made sure was that consistently, week after week, there would be something we would keep posting, right? And then around 2011 or 12, we decided to ramp this up. We started doing 2 to 3 stories a week. And then I think 2013 we quit everything and we started doing this full time, and then it really ramped up. And as we kind of took it up seriously and ramped up our content side of things, that's when the real growth started. Because people also took it seriously. Because until you don't take it seriously, your consumers are never going to take it seriously, right? So I think then is when we started seeing the rapid growth happen. And then from 2015 to 2021 now, I think we went from probably being read by about 1 lakh people a month, all the way today to more than 20 crore people reading us every month, and hugely popular on all social media channels and so on. The traction also has been because I would also attribute it to the trend of digital consumption being on the rise. More and more people kind of have, if you notice, a lot of us now consume content online. The newspaper content consumption is more customary now rather than an important one, right? So I think that also helped in getting people this thing. And then we had a lot of strategic partnerships with a lot of other organizations, which helped get the visibility for the Better India. And then we launched in regional languages. In fact, we're now in a couple of languages, and now we are aiming to kind of go in many other languages. That'll also again increase our readership. But yeah, I think the one thing I do want to point out is that the entire growth was organic. We never had to spend money on advertising ourselves, because our content really carried fast. So people would share this content. And I think my insight has been that the need to get inspired is a very universal one. It's not restricted to people in business. It's not restricted to people in sports. It's not restricted to senior citizens or young kids. It's a universal need. And that's really, I think, helped us, kind of grow much broader.
So I think last year, the pandemic has been a time for a lot of introspection, and also a lot of people, in fact a lot of startups have exploded growth in the last pandemic. And I think there's lot of organizations, while there was a pullback in the traditional businesses, in the new businesses or the new models of businesses, there's been a lot of traction. And I understand you set off with this better home to leverage on the existing community. So if you can just tell us more about how this, one is you build the community is just subscriptions onto your Better India digital platform, or was there any other ways of engagement that you got onto them? And then how did you get onto that better home and drive that kind of a beautiful thought?
Yeah. So Meera, again, just going back to our larger vision, right? It was always about how are we going to use the internet to drive change. By 2018 or so, we'd reached a fairly sizable readership. I think it was at that point it was about 5-6 crore people reading us every month.
Wow.
And we then started thinking about how do we go deeper on some of the pillars that matter to us. One of the pillars was sustainability, and we used to write a lot about sustainability. We still have a section on sustainability, and as we started writing about it, we noticed a few interesting things. The first was that content around sustainability, which was around natural products, do-it-yourself products, organic stuff, was actually getting a lot of traction, and it had started kind of really increasing. Second was that we noticed that there was a trend amongst people to want to adopt new age brands, brands who promise something beyond the usual. Right? So there was this whole trend which was starting to emerge. So we actually started having conversations with our audience, especially the audience who was reading our content around sustainability. And we realized that there was a big growing need for people. And this is a very interestingly tired approach, okay? First, people became conscious about what are they eating. So that awareness came very, very first, right? So people are now conscious about, are they putting, trans fats inside them? Are they eating too much oil, masala, all of that stuff? Once that happened, and people, and then you let the emergence of the entire healthy foods and organic foods and all of that happen. Then people started becoming conscious about what are the chemicals they're applying on their skin. So which is what led to the emergence of a new range of, personal care products, right? So now you have shampoo which does not use sulfates and phthalates, and you have, stuff which is made out of organic ingredients and so on. The third is that first it became about what you put inside you, then what on you. And the third was naturally going to be what's going to be around you, right? And that led to the whole idea about home care, because the core thing that you do in your homes is wash your laundry, wash your dishes, your floor cleaning, your toilet cleaning, all of that. And that was a very sort of every month usage sort of a thing. It's a very utility thing. It was also one of the most damaging from an environment perspective. Every time we wash our clothes, we wash our dishes, we release tons of chemically contaminated water into our sewage systems. And unfortunately, in India, our sewage systems invariably get linked with our water bodies eventually, right? So what we are basically doing is having a lot of harmful carcinogenic chemicals coming into our households. We clean our floors, and our pets, like our pet dog, pet cat, they lick off the floors. Babies licking off the floors. So there's, in general, a lot of harmful things that we were kind of doing. And during the pandemic, I think people also realized that long-term immunity is a very important thing. So putting all this together, we saw that there was a big demand for home care products which are sustainable and safe. And we did almost 6 months of research working with environmental agencies. And eventually we launched the Better Home, which had just 4 products, a floor cleaner, a toilet cleaner, and a laundry wash and a dishwash. But they were all made from plant-based ingredients, made of microbes, organic microbes, which would eat the germs. And they were 100% biodegradable. Right? So it was the first of its kind in the home care space. But we were really passionate about giving an option to our customers. And this was just before the pandemic lockdown hit us. So it coincided with that. And the moment that happened, we saw that the sales skyrocketed, because now more people were staying at home. And one insight that actually we got in hindsight, we never anticipated, is that in a country like India, all our products are never used by the customer. Home cleaning is largely done by domestic help in a country like India, right? And so the customer who's buying it is not going to use it. But when the pandemic happened, you had the customer who was buying it was actually using it, and it really mattered to them. So they stuck to this, and that really kind of, I think, we had some sort of an advantage there, which took off. And in a year's time, we were the largest direct to consumer home care company in India. In a year's time, we kind of scaled it to that level. And then, of course, when we were considering our next way of scaling, we got a few offers for some of the FMCG companies wanting to buy this out and scale it and take it to retail and all of that. And we said, maybe, I think our strength is lying in getting an idea from a 0 level to a 1 level. And we felt that a larger FMCG company would be able to do justice to the operations aspect of building it out of much larger. And that's when the acquisition happened, and we kind of agreed to that. But to us, it did two things. It showed that you can seed an idea and pull it off and get the whole industry to start taking notice. We're done with media. We brought a whole new idea that positive news, solutions-based news works. We did it with FMCG. We showed that there is a big demand for and a big market for safe cleaners, and we will continue to do that on top of the community, right? Which is really our strength. So now what we're working on is the Better Academy. Again, very early stage, but what we want to do is, how can I help any adult Indian to get multiple sources of income? There are so many ways that people can actually unlock their true economic potential, and how can we kind of do that, right? So yeah, I think it's all kind of around that whole ecosystem of wanting to do good, and that's the Better Home journey, by the way. That's how it is.
So this Better Home, you all had your products, or you engaged the community to provide you those products?
No, we made the products. We engaged with the community to know what they wanted, and we used the community as a testing group. So a lot of we would formulate something, send it out to a bunch of people. A week later, we would get feedback, and then do that again with another set of customers, our readers and so on. So the entire community of the Better India became our user group, right? And they were rallying behind this because they built it with us. So there was this whole excitement of building a product with a company. In fact, even our customer care, was constructed as WhatsApp groups. So everybody who would buy this product would get added to a WhatsApp group, and they would have access to everybody in the senior management. So it wasn't just a brand that we were putting it out there, but we were building it out as a community-driven product, which everybody then embraced.
And if you have your champions and the users, nothing better than that.
Absolutely, that's been our biggest learning.
That's really wonderful. So, we'd like to know more about, you said that Better Academy. That's what you have. You're putting out for your edtech firm. So, what are the kind of areas of employment that the employability? Is it going to be courses, or is it going to be, like, it's your community going to use those courses, or the community going to train those courses? What exactly do you envisage it to be?
Yeah, the whole idea again came from the content and the community. So we have over the years been writing stories about various people who have faced adversity, gone ahead and created their own, say, micro businesses, small businesses, and scaled them up, right? And they've done it phenomenally well, right? And we've written about them. So the idea was that if they have actually done it, why should anyone else reinvent the wheel? Why should anyone else stumble upon things and then discover the same formula? Instead, can we get those people to not just talk about their stuff what they've done in an article form, but distill it into a course, into an actionable course that anybody can start with, and be able to set themselves up for either self-employment or employment, right? That's one thing. That was one input we had. The second input we had is that if you look, and this is our bet on the future, I think in future people will seek out multiple sources of income. That is going to be the way. For too long, we've been in the 9 to 5, 9 to 6 sort of a single career, slaughtered that I'm a banker, I'm a financier, I'm a lawyer, and we've kind of been that done. The gig economy has started showing us the trends that are going to emerge in the near future, 5 years, 10 years down the line. You already see people who work as, cab drivers in the weekends, are doing delivery in the evenings, taking classes and so on. Our goal is to educate people and make it a lot easier for them to find these alternative sources of income. Now, why is this important? I think the classic sort of pointer to this is what happened in the pandemic. The resilience of people who had multiple sources of income was extremely important as compared to people who had only one skill. And if that, for some reason, that sector was hit badly, people were hit badly, right? That's the other part that I want to kind of talk about. That this is why it's also important. The fourth part why it's also important is that I think there is a lot waiting to be unlocked in our citizens. If you look at the entire the homemakers in the country, right? They're raring to go. It's just that conventional industry norms have not been able to absorb people because they need this full-time way of working, a completely engaged workforce. But today's new age world, you can actually just work for 2-3 hours and make a side income by reselling products in your community, becoming an e-commerce sort of ambassador for certain companies, doing a whole bunch of stuff. So when we started looking at all these problems that exist, we realized that there is a need for someone to come in and create a platform where you bring in a lot of learning material, access to information, so that people can come in, take these courses, and really, economically uplift themselves. So that's really the larger picture that we are working on. Do we have the solution as of now? No, not yet. But that's the blueprint with which we are operating, and we want to kind of really go after economic impact in this country.
Really, I mean, really a noble thought, and at the same time, a very empowering kind of a strategy that you are, building. And wishing you all the best for that Better Academy. And with that, I think everyone else will also prosper, because knowledge, I always believe, multiplies when you share it, and there's nothing more than that when it goes through. Right. And rightly said, the gig economy is actually redefining the workplaces, the work concept, the millennials and the next Gen Zs. They're really not bothered about a regular career or even a career progression. They're only bothered about, roles that they play which can make a difference to their lives. And it could be some of them are more in that wider perspective of impact areas, but otherwise most of them are looking at various ways on how they can explore their own talents or go about it. So many of them will have day job and they'll be still doing multiple activities on the side and keep themselves engaged. So it's a really brilliant vision, and that's the way forward. We believe this world is going to take move forward. So in your thing, there was actually, how do you feel in an economy like Kerala now? What is your thoughts and expectations? How would you think that a place like Kerala or a state like Kerala, with so much of education, there is a lot of potential, and one of the biggest areas for us is tourism, health, and so on. We're very, very developed in those sectors. So how do you think Better India can make, what do you think, or how do you think Better India, we could collaborate with Better India, or Better India could find ways on us? Because I recently saw your article on Crystal in Kerala, how she has been helping
Yeah.
She's a Swiss lady. I know her. I mean, on one of our forum, she's there, and it's really wonderful the kind of initiative somebody from outside Kerala, and we have many such stories. Many foreigners are here, settled and doing a lot of good work, right, from art, culture, and so on. So we'd like to have your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, but, I think collectively we've done more trips to Kerala than any other state from Bangalore. And because I absolutely love the state, and I'm Kerala cuisine is right on top of my list of food that I really like. So I personally think that there's just so much to offer in the state, especially considering the demographic advantage that Kerala has, like the whole literacy part, the culture part, and historically it's been, I think we talk a lot about eco-friendly and all of sustainability now as though they are new age topics, but if you just go to Kerala, and you will notice that all cultures steeped into that sustainable way of living, right? um, I personally very strongly believe that there is a huge opportunity for micro entrepreneurship to emerge out of a state like Kerala. We're just waiting to unlock potential in almost every citizen to be able to uh, run and sort of scale at a I'm not talking about like startups and stuff, but I'm talking about at a micro small scale business level. There is so much of an opportunity uh, for Kerala to do, and especially if you just look at around the tourism and the travel sector, right? For instance, I'm aware that ecotourism is such a big thing that people are willing to pay a premium for it. Just uh, having that as a sector and being able to be the leader in the country for ecotourism can just set the whole thing apart, because 5 years, 10 years down the line, you are going to see a big wave happen in the travel sector where people are starting to opt for things which are different from the norm, and eco travel is going to be one of them. You're already seeing so many startups which are coming up which are curating eco travel destinations, for instance, right? So that's a big opportunity. There's a big opportunity. I still remember visiting one of the villages in Kerala which was using bamboo to create a whole lot of products, and the entire bamboo was sustainable. They used to grow it and then harvest it, and make stuff. I think if you start thinking about the internet audience, and if you can think of building a premium range of products which are branded in a sort of a manner that the Instagram audience loves it, and I think it's just waiting to happen and explode, right? There is just so much there which can be taken and brought it into the new age economy. All it needs is someone to kind of come in with that layer of that premium brand positioning building. You already have the back end. So I personally think there's so much to do. I would be really excited to see all of this come through.
I think we'll all be very happy to support that. In fact, Nirmala, we have a lot of women, very entrepreneurial women, and who are doing a lot of things in micro level. But probably the platforms are still very small, where they get the window to the markets or window to the audience. And I'm sure there will be great opportunities where we can look at. And so I think we are reaching the end, and now I'll go take some Q&As. So I had some questions. One was, how do you get those wonderful stories for Better India? This is from Shailaja. She had a couple of questions actually. Is it through reporters or contributors, or how do you do it? Initially, I know you have been doing your own stories. After that,
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Shailaja. And today we have a large team. We have a 25-member team spread across, who's actually on the lookout for these stories. That's one, of course, the team that does this. Um, Additionally, we also have a very large reader community now. So they are pointing out to a lot of things that are happening in their neighborhoods. That also comes into this team. And then we have partner institutions. A lot of institutions we've been working with over the many, many years, who are sharing things about some of the interventions and ideas that have worked in their space. And that also again kind of comes into this team. And once we get all of this, there's a huge influx of stories. Then there's a team dedicated to kind of do the whole processing, vetting, fact checking, verification, then producing the stories and kind of going out there. I still remember when we started, people would ask me, but where will you get so many positive stories from, right? Because the belief has always been that there's only crime and politics in this country, because that's all we've been fed. So it would come as a surprise to people that we're actually getting so many stories that we're not able to publish everything. We get at least 100 emails a day for its stories, right? Um, and to me, the idea is that we've been so jaded, because if you look around yourself, it's not that 10 out of 10 people that you meet on a daily basis are criminals who are willing to stab you, but they are actually genuinely good people. And when you see that around you, why do we refuse to believe that there are so many positive stories in the country, right? The fact and the advantage is that factually there are more positive stories than negative stories. It's just that we've never been fed them.
So do you do a fact check? You have a local team at that time or connected with various parts of the country?
Yeah. We have an in-house team which does that. Then we have partner institutions who also help us out in that. So they go through various stages of sort of filtering there. And then they go through another process of editing and data and all of that stuff.
Wonderful. The other question that she had is, because it's an impact business, how is it possible to ensure profit, or at least not make losses while building such a business?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that's one which I did not even speak about now. But what I want to highlight is that we were very clear we wanted to build it as a for-profit company. We did not want to build it as a as a company that would live on donations or grants, right? So right from the beginning, while we were building this, we were constantly experimenting on revenue models as well. And I'm proud to say that we've been profitable since 2016. But 2015 is when we formally started the company, and the year later we turned profitable, and we've remained profitable. How do we do this? There are multiple ways. One of the main ways is that we work with a lot of some of the biggest brands of India, where we co-create content around causes that we both believe in, right? So if there is a brand which believes in water conservation, we believe in water conservation. So we would combine forces and identify stories around the country, talking about innovations in water management, right? And you would have that brand come in and say, this is the brand that sponsors this series around water conservation. Very early on, I was also clear that we will not do PR for brands. And it was a tough one because we were walking away from money. But slowly, I think brands also realized that doing PR is kind of meaningless because it doesn't do anything. The audience is never reading it. Nobody is reading how many trees your company planted, right? It does no service to you. It does no service to the audience. So when we started educating companies around, and this was about 2014, 2015, it took a while. But after we got our first few, companies coming in, then suddenly others started taking notice. And today we've worked with over 400, some of the biggest brands, MNCs of the country. We continue to work with, and they are the ones where we get our revenues from. We also do syndication of our content. Our content is purchased by some of the other sort of publications, so that's another revenue source. The Better Home was a big revenue source. It was a income generating business that we created on top of our community. So on and so forth. We have many sort of focuses on revenue generation, which is extremely critical because that is what feeds into the whole impact creation cycle.
Wonderful. We have one. Anyone else, please put down your questions in the chat box. We could have more questions for Dhiman. And one question that has come from Devi is, how was the phase where you left your job and completely plunged in for the Better India? Was it easy journey?
Hi, Devi. Thanks for asking that question. It was the toughest phase, I must say. I've been invited here to speak now because it all worked out. if it hadn't worked out, that decision would have been the dumbest decision for anybody. Because this is 2013. These are two engineers who've been to B school, one of the reputed B schools of India. We had good, high-paying jobs, and we had just had a baby, I think a 2-year, 3-year-old baby, and we were letting it all go because we were extremely passionate about building the better India. It was the toughest decision. I wouldn't say it was tough for us both. Internally, I think we had the conviction, but the external sort of stimuli uh, makes it extremely hard, especially I think in a country like India. So where you have your family talking about the fact that impact and all of that should be thought about after retiring, uh, not in your prime, right? We were like in our early 30s. Um, so you have that, you have social pressure, you have peer pressure because all your friends are kind of continuing to rise up the corporate ladder, and monetarily you're basically set back 10 years, 15 years, when you're just starting your first job. So all those were hard. And I think what really helped us is that as a husband wife couple, we were in this together. And that gave each of us immense support uh, and strength, that we just kind of defied it all, and we said we will do this no matter what. And I think it was that dire circumstance also that forced us to innovate and come up with business models that would get this to profitability as quickly as possible. So I think I view all of these as sort of advantages that we had that really pushed us in a corner and forced us to really act and act quick.
Wonderful. Actually, I was going to ask you on a personal note, but you have given the answer already. That there might have been moments when things are not going right between the co-founders. How did you all deal with it in the house and off the house at the workplace? There would have
Yeah.
been, I'm sure, some moments. Although otherwise, you must be in total synergy for such a venture.
Yeah, I think uh, I think that one of the very important factors was that there is a lot of complementary skills that we both have. So on things that she's really good at, I am not, and on things that I'm really good at, she's not. So that sort of very very early on became clear what parts of the work I could do and what she could do, and we never really had any conflicts in that sense. But more importantly, I think one very interesting thing that I learned is that when you're working with your spouse, uh, you really have no ego because you have nothing to prove, as compared to any other co-founder. You really don't have any need to be a one-upmanship thing going. So it forces you to discuss the problem objectively. So the conversation always becomes about the problem itself, and it's never about I was right or you were wrong, because look, I mean, this is your spouse. You pretty much have zero ego between you, and I think that was a huge benefit because it never allowed us to stray from what the issue was, and we were always able to just get back to it. And I must say, I think building it together made us a much stronger, made a stronger bond between us than it would have been if we were doing our own careers separate.
Wonderful, wonderful. Because that kind of what you put it beautifully. The synergy is really built within. Wonderful. I don't know whether any more questions have
I
come.
do have one, Meera, if I can come in, Shalvi here.
Yeah, please.
Thanks. Thank you, Deman, for that. That was very useful. And Meera, thanks for all the questions so far. So while we wait for the audience to post any questions, I want to come back to a couple of questions earlier where you spoke about corporates, Deman. And in your sense, what is it that corporates should do more of? And I don't mean, as you said, PR and plant a few trees, etc. But in this whole endeavor of what you're working on, which is the Better India, Better Academy, these two, and in particular Better Academy, I would think. Do you think corporates? I mean, what should corporates do more of? What's your sense?
I think two things. One is, of course, I think need to educate their workforce towards what is a better future. Right now, it could be anything. Right? It could, for a particular corporate, it could be around a greener environment, sustainability. It could be just an empathetic workforce. It could be women empowerment. It could be more representation of people from the minorities. I mean, it just totally depends on the DNA of the corporate. But I think the education towards the employees is very important, because a lot of time we speak to corporates, and while the senior folks are really talking about the larger vision, it doesn't come the moment you start talking at the next level, where it becomes a purely transactional conversation, right? So if I'm talking to a very large MNC and they're talking about sustainability in the next 10 years, they want to meet the UN SDGs, and that's a great conversation. And then it comes down to execution. It's more about, okay, what are your deliverables and what's mine, and it's done. And I don't think it can work that way, right? So I think there is a need for the corporate senior management to kind of educate the entire workforce on how equally important this aspect of impact, change, whatever that is, it is as much as it is all your other KPIs, right? And that's going to be a hard one, Shalini, to be honest. Look, I struggle with it even in an organization which is geared towards impact, right? Because as we keep growing, as we keep getting more and more people in, at some point it starts becoming transactional, right? It is a hard one, so I'm not saying I'm blaming corporates, but I think that's a big challenge. And corporates with their resources can definitely try and do a lot more there. I think the second thing is to really make these conversations go mainstream.
Part of the mainstream.
We haven't done that. We've been trying at the Better India, of course, trying to make it relatable, make it more mainstream. But I've been amazed at the kind of work many of the corporates are doing. And I know that if we just start talking about it, it'll inspire so many more other people and corporates and the professional sector. But we're not doing enough about it. And many of us kind of feel shy from the fact that, we as a group don't talk about the good we do. But there is an upside to it. If you actually start talking about it, you will inspire many other people to kind of do it. And so what you are striving will become 10x or 100x, which is what, I mean, the data shows in the Better India itself. It's just by putting it out there, we have inspired many more millions of people to go kind of make that difference. So I think corporates need to talk about it more. I think that's basically it. Internally and externally, talk about it and bring that empathy out.
That's true. Very, very well. Thank you. Thanks, Dhiman, for that.
Thank you, Shalini. There's another question from Adarsh. He is saying, how was the pandemic effects on Better India and its positive stories?
So during the pandemic, we actually doubled our readership. Mm-hmm. I don't say this with a lot of glee, because it was the worst phases for us. But what happened is that people started seeking out stories of hope. We didn't do anything different. Like I would love to kind of say that, we did this and that, and then we kind of, but we didn't do anything different. We just stuck to the kind of stories we were writing. And we saw more and more people gravitating towards reading us. What we then started doing, though, is that we realized that there is a huge, there's this huge group of people who were starting to kind of come forward from society and fight COVID and help fight COVID. So we instituted COVID Hero Awards, which is the first of its kind. We were rewarding in cash every week 2 COVID heroes. And that led to a lot more people realizing that we can actually help out in these ways. So we started again catalyzing that sort of a change. So I think the pandemic was a big source of learning for us. Internally, of course, the organization went completely remote, how we had to kind of tackle that. We were seeing growth in readership, we doubled it. And then we started, working on COVID, and we did a whole lot of resources around COVID. We in fact built a live tracker. You could check for beds and oxygen availability. We built an app for it overnight. You could actually, and we created this sort of map of India where you could hover over any district and read positive stories coming from that district. And that became a huge hit. So it was a great sort of amalgamation of tech and content that we did and started, giving people more reasons to hang in there.
It's very heartening to see. Always good is linear. And it really, takes whatever be the bandwidth, that man lives on hope, and that really takes it from there.
Yeah, in fact, this hope thing, right? Then we got approached by Penguin, and we then launched a book, and it just went live last week. and it's called the Book of Hope, which is in partnership with Penguin. And it again has all the stories that we've featured over the years, and a lot of new stories. Because even even Penguin was like, what the world needs is hope. Really, that's the fundamental essence of everything we do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have one last question, if no one else has. Who are your competitors in your space? Is there any competitor at all, or are there new ones who have copied and got into your space?
We've never viewed competition as someone who does similar stuff as us, right? For us, competition is anything that takes away your mind space from focusing on the good stuff, right? So competition is everything. Competition is that news channel you're watching. Competition is you reading something else. The competition is you're thinking about something else. Anything, right? It's competition. What are we fighting for? We're fighting for 2-3 minutes of your time in a day to just understand that, hey, this is something amazing that's happening, and you should know about it, right? That's really our first attempt to get you to kind of do it. So we've never kind of focused on competition from a conventional sense that, oh, if you're starting to do positive stories, then you're competition, because I don't think it is. In today's diffused world, any distraction is a competition.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think we come to the end of the session. We're already close to the time. Thank you so much, Dhiman, for spending this evening with us and giving us your valuable inputs and insights from your journey. I think there's a lot of takeaway for all of us. I would like to now hand it over to Shalini.
I'll take it over. Thank you, Meera.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meera, for being an awesome moderator and getting out many relevant aspects from the speaker. Thank you so much. Mr. Dhiman Parekh, a computer science engineer turned an entrepreneur of many startups and the better India. Very much exciting to listen to your startup stories, a lot of novel ideas, corporate ideas, whatnot. And about Kerala, you mentioned that Kerala, the prediction, micro entrepreneurship emerges, and Kerala has got opportunity to travel tourism, ecotourism. I, being from the tourism sector, very happy to know that. And then we are very pleased to know that you've been recognized as the most influential voice and inspiring India to drive social change. I like the way you mentioned Anuradha and I are consumers of content and writing content, sustainability. It's very interesting to listen to you. And you also mentioned about a multiple source of income that is already in practice. In my office, I'm experiencing that. And it is really very exciting, motivating, and inspiring. Thank you so much, Mr. Debat.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Dhiman Parekh. And before I just hand over to the chairperson, let me announce the forthcoming event for this month, 30th of October 2021, LEAD 2021. That's a leadership seminar in association with Rotary District 3201. Speakers, Padma Shri, Vibhushan, Dr. R.A. Mashikar, a premier Indian scientist, former Director General, CSIR, and Mr. Gopinath Mudkat, motivational speaker, founder, Magic Academy. Now I request Madam Shalini Warrior to sum up the session and propose vote of thanks. Madam Shalini Warrior, the Women Forum Chairperson, and she is the Executive Director, Business Head, Retail of Federal Bank Limited. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nirmala. So let me first kind of start by saying a big thank you to you, Dhimant. We reached out and you were unhesitatingly and generous of your time. I think over the last hour or so, you've given us a huge perspective on actually what the art of the possible is, as I call it. If one just opens up one's mind to what's out there in terms of positive stories, it just spends, as you said, 3 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day reading it. I think it's going to be a huge influence, because I think that positivity, it can permeate into an organization, into one's own individual, into one's family, etc., is huge. So thanks very much for opening that. As you head into the next phase of Better Academy, let me take this opportunity on my own behalf and on behalf of KMA and all the others working here to wish you the very best. Very certain that you will make that as successful as Better Home was and Better India is. So congratulations on that new venture. And Dimant, thank you once again for being here. We enjoyed the session you had with us in January 2020 in physical environment in the Hyatt with your little boy there. I still remember he was our youngest delegate in the audience, and we do hope to replicate that in due course once these kind of physical stuff opens up. But thank you, Diman. Thank you for coming on the session. Meera, colleague of mine or fellow member with CII, had no hesitation in saying yes when I reached out to her saying would she help doing this session as a moderator, as ever brilliantly done. A lot of homework done to get the right kind of questions crafted together and to flow through the session extremely well to draw out very good insights for this audience. So thank you very much, Meera, for playing that role. Thank you. Nirmala, you've stood in for Madhav Chandran very effectively. Thank you very much for that, for setting the context on KMA and introducing Meera and taking the session forward. So thank you very much, Nirmala.
Thank you, ma'am.
To the entire Women's Forum, my fellow members of the Women's Forum, members of the Managing Committee, Executive Committee, everybody, all of you present here, past presidents of KMA, thank you very much. And a big thank you to the audience who's come on to hear Dimant. I'm sure all of us are inspired to go and not just read up your book, which I've seen the link of in the chat group, but also kind of look out for the stories that come out in Better India and look forward to what Better Academy will bring. So thank you very much to everybody. Have a great day. Wishing everybody a Diwali, a very, very happy, joyous and safe Diwali in advance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shalini. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Meera.
Thank you so much. Happy Diwali in
And
advance. to all.
happy Diwali. Madam Shalini ma'am has been meticulously and brilliantly organizing all programs. Thank you for organizing yet another brilliant session, ma'am. We are looking forward to your next session.
Thank you. And I forgot to do something which I must admit. I'm sorry, Dimant and Meera, I missed doing that. It's a convention in KMA that we give a physical memento to prove the fact that you've spent time with us in the KMA. What you see on the screen, therefore, are two kind of live examples, or I don't know what, memento that has been created by the secretarial team. So they've put this together. It will come to you in due course by courier. Prajit, Jomon, thank you very much for all the help in organizing this and in putting this memento together. Dimant, I will thank Sarah separately because she's also been brilliant in organizing this. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so much.
everyone.
And with this, I adjourn.